The Impact of Death and Dying on the Personal Lives and Practices of Palliative and Hospice Care Professionals by Haley Green. The idea of the article. In this article, healthcare professionals were interviewed about how death and dying have impacted them in their personal lives and in regards to the medical field, and was conducted in Canada. Methods. The author of the article, Dr. Sinclair, conducted research using two phases of people that were a variety of different healthcare professionals, such as nurses, doctors, and psychologists. In phase 1, it consisted of 6 key leaders that worked in 5 different palliative and hospice care centers across Canada. In phase 2, consisted of a convenient sample of 24 frontline palliative and hospice professionals that worked in a hospice center in the province of Alberta. Methods continued. Each participant was interviewed for about 2 hours each. The auditor used an outline to ask questions, but the conversation was open for participants to talk freely about their experiences with death and dying. The interviews were conducted over a span of a week, and then a preliminary analysis was done to view the overall data. Next, the data was member checked, which means that participants reviewed the interpretations and validated them. After all the data was collected, it was then put into themes and categories. The themes were past, present, and future. Quotes of healthcare professionals from the article associated with themes within the article. I hand-selected a couple of different quotes that were interesting and related well to our class, Death and Dying. So for the theme past, this quote, "For many years I kept a vial of cyanide in my desk, so death has been a companion of mine for most of my life. I would say from the time I was a teenager, I was attracted to the idea of death as a way out, and it's only been in recent years, at least in the last 10 years or more, that's no longer been a background issue for me." Palliative and hospice care professionals. I thought that this quote was interesting because it was a healthcare provider who works with death every day. And I get from this quote that the reason they are okay with not having death as a companion anymore is because they understand death and they don't see it as a way out, because they don't see it as like an end of life event. They see it as something like reality that happens in their everyday life. The next quote, "Shortly before I got there, medical school, I experienced 2 very significant deaths. So I think that superficially my interest in palliative care, was the death of my father-in-law and the death of my roommate, combined with my interest in combining humanities with medicine. I think that also I had a fair number of deaths in my family through my childhood, so I had more exposure to death." When I was reading the article, this theme of past, the categories that came from, like, that correspond with those quotes, are integrated death from an early on stage in life and a disintegrated death from an early on stage of life, which they mean in the article. Integrated means that it was a positive viewpoint and disintegrated was a negative viewpoint. But in the overall research, it stated that the participants, regardless of having a negative or a positive experience with death, it made them more comfortable in regards to working with patients who are dying and working with family members whose family is dying. Present. The practice dying every day, for the most part, I'm just very aware this could be it, and there is nothing, oh my God, and is there not anything today I want to do, and it's just fleeting. It is not even 5 minutes. It is just a bit. So I think that practicing death every day, the way she's talking about it, is almost like inspiration to not be afraid to live. How do I want to die? I already have died in some regard, and I want that to be my teacher. And I think that holds importance because if he's already died in some regard, it means that he has been hurt, or she has been hurt in some aspect and has felt like they've died. And I think that that feeling is what teaches them to be comfortable with the thought of death and dying. The next quote: I think that the unknown is what causes great disease for people. We don't have the answers, and to pretend that we do would be arrogant. I think I am more comfortable with, or less uneasy with, the unknown. I'm willing to trust God is everywhere, and I mean, if we have the eyes and the open hearts to the working of the Spirit. Not everyone believes in God, and not everyone even believes in a higher power, but I think that if you're in the palliative healthcare setting, that it's important to think of death other than just that's it. I think it's important to look at death as a spiritual existence, which is what I got from the article, and I also agree with, because I feel like it makes death an easier topic to work with, and it gives you a perspective that it's a beautiful event in your life rather than an ugly event in your life. The next theme was future. The notion of being curious at the time of one's death was something that had a lot of appeal for me. If one can at least go to one's death curious about what lies beyond, then death doesn't have the same finality that it has if we think that it is it. And I think that she is talking about being curious about death, because in actuality we all don't know what is going to happen after we die. We might think we know, but we don't know for certain. And I think that still being curious about it, she's saying, is better than saying that, oh, that's it. Like, it's God and that's it. There's nothing else. There's no other way. I think having an open mind is also very important in the health field, because everybody has different views and opinions about what happens. And in regards to their death, I think that you need to respect their wishes when they're dying, being a healthcare provider. The next quote: I want to know that I am going to die. I hate the idea of being sedated. Mindfulness at the moment of death is what determines the next time. My goal is to try and maintain my mindfulness as long as possible. The next quote: It is just a strong sense that beyond physical life there is still a presence, just a presence. And I think that this all ties together in regards to the theme of future. So there were a lot more quotes from this article, but I only pulled out a couple just to show the class some of the aspects that this article covers, because I think it's such a different viewpoint. Instead of just doing statistical research, it's opinions from people who actually work in the healthcare setting every single day. Importance behind this article. This article is important because it is geared towards this course. All of the quotes I pulled out of the article hold significance because it shows a perspective from someone who works with death and dying every day, which is basically what I just said. I have found that after reading this article, it has given me a broader perspective with the thought of myself and my loved ones dying.